as you said, I'm Leslie, and
I'm Matthew Tabor, Matthew America, as some of you may know who follow me on Instagram.
And we have been Letter Set for the last 6 years or so, which is us doing design for the restaurant.
It is only us, yeah.
For the restaurant industry mostly has been our game, which we stumbled into and have fallen in love with, obviously.
Yeah.
And we are really excited to, first of all, talk to you about flow, because when we first heard this word, we had the option to look at the words and see what resonated. It really grabbed both of us in a way that, I don't know, it spoke to the way we feel about how we want design to work, how we want to experience our work, and how often we want to experience life. And I think that's true for all of us, in that we really want to find that flow, that groove, that ease, and a bit of confidence in what we do. And so we want to talk to you about that, and in many ways also talk to you about that in relation to sign painting.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things in the sign painting process that apply to flow, and because they're in the sign painting process, they also apply to kind of the way that we deal with design and life, just existentially through that vein. So in this talk, we're going to kind of hit 5 points that we feel can get people to a point of flow within their craft. That said, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm still learning as much as you're learning. I've been doing this for 6 years. Every day I find something new that's impactful to the way that I work. That's part of our process too, which we'll talk about during this, hopefully.
Yeah.
So to start things off, our first word is going to be spark. What that means to us is kind of how we work within our field. And the way that we do that is kind of unique because we are working completely alone and powering under our own steam. We find what brings us a spark, like what brings us to life, what makes us hungry, what talks to us that just can't be ignored. So to a certain extent, spark for us means that thing that brings you to life, that makes you want to wake up in the morning, that makes you want to keep doing what you're doing. In sign painting, spark, that's how I kind of fell into this, is literally just like stumbling across lettering brushes. I used to do a bunch of hand-drawn chalkboards with like a stick of chalk. And chalk, if you've ever used it, if you haven't, great. But you get a variable width. You're only getting one stroke. So it can take hours to do these letters just because you're trying to recreate a stroke width just with a singular stick of chalk. So I stumbled across a lettering brush, and there's so many widths. You get these widths that range from all of the points in the rainbow. So within that, I was just like, oh, just like, why have I not known about this? And mostly because the craft has died, which is one of the reasons why I'm trying to propel it forward and trying to keep it alive. But because of that, that's what sparked my interest. It's become an integral part of our business. So it's what I like to do. So that's our first word, spark. Like, find what brings you that spark.
And he's going to start doing some live painting as we talk. If you are interested, we also have a Instagram live feed going, just so you can actually see his hands in case you're in a place that makes it difficult.
If you are in the back, you can't see it.
So if you go to Matthew_America, which is his Instagram, it has a live stream going just so you can watch as he paints.
Addendum. I've never painted in front of this many people critically looking at what I'm doing. So if it's extra shaky, forgive me.
If he wipes them off and starts over, that's normal.
Yeah. Just ignore it. But I'm excited to do this for you guys and kind of share a bit about this piece of the passion of the puzzle that we've kind of put together in our working lives.
Yeah, and I think just talking more about spark when it applies to design, how we fell into what we do, it was very much not because we were, quote, qualified or that we really even knew what we were going to be doing, but it was because we both had this kind of draw, this interest into making things more beautiful into getting to use our hands, getting to be creative, getting to kind of do things a little differently and having some personal freedom. It was all these little things that lit us up, that every time we would come across a new opportunity, if it lit us up, we could easily tell that this is the path. Even though 6 years ago, if we had said we were going to be doing restaurant design, we would have not believed ourselves in any way, which is kind of the fun part about Spark. If you actually start listening to that inner gut, that pull, you really don't know where it's going to lead. And sometimes in design projects too, we get that little spark. I know some of you guys are designers or work in the creative field, and there are times where something hits you and you're like, I don't know where this came from. This idea or this desire to create in this way, to pull up dying art forms and spend our time doing it. But if you lean into that, it really does not only pay off, but it makes life so much more worth living. And it makes the work more worth doing. We've definitely also come across jobs that we realized pretty soon did not light us up, did not give us that spark. And we've been able to learn how to adjust how we work, what we work, who we work with based on listening to that, which is hard because a lot of times in our culture we are not told to listen to ourselves. We're told to think logically, which if anyone, again, told us to think logically, we would not be running a design business.
That's the goddamn truth. Pardon my language.
Yeah, and it just, things don't always add up in the way that the mind thinks it should, or the way society or culture thinks it should. Why put paint on anything when you can get vinyl printed in a way faster than he's painting right now.
So much faster.
But there's something to that that beauty in following that passion and following the art form that we really feel strongly about. And I don't know, I think we can tell when we're doing design when that spark has been present for ourselves. And even has been present for the client too. He's trying to paint as fast as he can. I can tell this is him rushing right now.
It is. Which is not a part of our talk. Rushing is not a part of craft or practice.
It's not. Yeah.
I'm almost done.
What's sparking today?
Huh?
What's sparking today?
Man,
Ooh.
the smell of fucking turpentine in the morning. That is where it's at. But that's just for me personally. That's one of the things that we stress a lot as well, is like individuality is key in finding your flow and finding your spark. Like you could really just get lit on accounting, and if that's your jam, like fucking geek out on it. Do what you can to learn about it and figure it out. That's what I've done, and I'm not showing that well here because I'm so nervous.
No, but it's very true as well, and that, I don't know, it's finding the stuff you're going to be willing to geek out on. They're really willing to follow, and that it doesn't matter that no one else is doing it to a certain degree. It's that individuality that comes from listening to yourself, not following every other designer, not following every other design trend that's happening. That's actually why I think we've been able to create some really fun brands, because we like doing what we like, and we like following our own intuition in a way that maybe doesn't show up on Pinterest all the time. And that's a good thing.
That it is. I'm totally gonna redo this while we're just mingling afterwards.
Oh, it's great. Whatever. He's nervous. It's really good.
Yeah, next in that process and kind of the way that we work, after you find that initial spark, what we've found is the necessity to learn everything about that spark, everything that drives it, how it operates, how you interact with it, how external elements interact with it. You have to learn and be dedicated to the craft that you're pursuing. It's the best way for you to move forward inside of that path, I think it's also very obvious when people don't fully understand what they're doing, the history of where it came from, all of the intricacies of the history and the people who have come before you. It's just an important step that we like to remember when we're moving forward within a design path or within our flow, is to remember who came before, honor that. It's a tradition that exists for a reason. Break it after you've learned it, but learn it first. So that said, I'm going to try to paint that word now.
Real fast.
Real fast.
But no, as a real life example, as soon as Matt discovered sign painting, I think he bought every single sign painting manual we could find on eBay, and all he did was read about it. We watched documentaries and every YouTube video of every old guy with a brush who's been doing this for 50+ years and trying to really absorb and learn that. And it's something that, sometimes we get that spark and we feel like we can just jump straight to doing, which, has its place at times, but there is so much more wealth and so much more depth you get with your experience when you actually take time to learn, to really absorb the traditions, the techniques, the tools. If you're working with a different culture or working with a different history, to really, really absorb that. Because if you don't do that, your work does end up being pretty shallow. We see that in some design and some art and some creative aspects, and we've been guilty of it too at times, where we've looked back and said, wow, we were
that could have been done way better.
Yeah, we were speaking to a tradition that we hadn't fully embraced or learned yet. And really, we're all growing on top of what everyone else has done before us. And if we don't take the time to know what they said, in essence, then we're just speaking into a void instead of continuing the conversation of design, of creativity, of accounting, or marathon running, or whatever it is you're into. It's this continual story that we're all actually participating in. So it's once you feel that spark, it's finding out where that already exists, how it's being done, how you can learn it. And as Matt said, you really do have to learn the rules first before you can break them. You have to know music theory before you can play good jazz. To really love Van Gogh, you have to know all the rules he was trying to break and all the traditions he was actually fighting against. And in doing that, you can actually kind of get that backbone to what you're doing. So definitely sign up for that class or that podcast, or get all the books on eBay that you can find, because that's really how you're going to progress and to really get to a point of being ready to do.
Is there an example of something you would have done differently had you known something ahead of time? Like, had you learned it?
Yeah. I'm gonna.
Yeah. There are countless examples of things that I know personally I would have done differently. But part of that flow that we're talking about existing in our process is learning from those mishaps, understanding what we've done wrong. Sometimes that's a client interaction that went a way that it shouldn't have gone. Sometimes it's a delayed deadline that we couldn't meet, that we tried our damnedest to meet. But it really is like there's so many innumerable ways that things can go wrong. And part of our craft and part of our flow is trying to learn from those things that have gone wrong and mapping them into a way that they can move smoothly into a flow in the future.
And I would say too, it's also learning from others and being able to see the things that others have done right and done wrong. I think it was, to bring a real life example, this space was a fun challenge. In that we were wanting to create something that felt neighborly and really spoke to the Lindale Park tradition and neighborhood, which has a Hispanic and Mexican culture influence. And Greg, who's one of the owners and bar managers, he grew up in this neighborhood. So he felt a very strong draw to what needed to be here, how it needed to feel. And in the very early stages of trying to mood board and think through this process, I typed in Mexican cantina into Pinterest, and the amount of sombreros and luchador masks and fiesta blankets. It was just overwhelming that there was this cliche and this stereotype that so exists and maybe works great in other spaces, but we knew that that was not what we wanted to be speaking to. And so it took us learning some things. We learned a lot more about the culture here in Lindell Park. We had to learn about the neighborhood. We had to learn about Greg's story and what he wanted to really bring into this space. We had to brush up on our Spanish and typing up the menu and
in sign painting.
And in sign painting to really find a good blend of what really resonated with both a Houston audience and a Lindell Park audience and a bilingual audience, and that, you know, wasn't just the same. It wasn't just the same conversation over and over again. It was trying to add something new to what's been done in other places, which is, yeah, all tied up in being willing to learn as well. I think there are times where all of us get a little big for our britches maybe and think we don't need to learn, that we don't need to keep practicing, keep hearing what other people are saying in the design world or saying in the creative world or in the sign painting world.
There's nothing more humbling in your craft than to just like recognize your failures, realize that you're coming short, stay humble within it. That's a huge part of what that learning process is always realizing that you could know more. There's nothing worse than the guy that thinks that he knows everything about the topic. It's not true. Like, there's no way in your existence on Earth that you could figure out everything that you need to know about the thing that you're pursuing and the thing that you're calling your passion. So yeah, I'm really slow.
He's learned that.
Yeah, it says leap. Let's turn that into a word.
I think we'll probably start moving past
we're
his
gonna
sign
start
painting.
moving past just because I'm kind of slow. So yeah, the next thing is the doing, which I'll start painting after I finish learning. And within that, so after you've gone through this phase of learning and really educating yourself and figuring out what it is that you need to know and what it is that propels your industry and who you are and what resonates with you and what brings you joy, like the next part is actually doing it. And inside of doing it is putting paint on a brush for me. I threw away so many painting brushes because I didn't know how to properly care for them, how to properly clean them. There's 16 different steps that I should have known before going into it, which I skipped just in the learning process, just because of the wealth of information that exists there. So it's really in the doing that those things start to click. You start to realize the importance of what you read, the steps that you missed, how to apply those, how to really make your substrate work for you, your medium work for you. So inside of that, that's our next step, is the doing, getting dirty.
Yeah, and that was definitely our experience the first few years as we were freelancing. We were definitely figuring out the ropes. It definitely felt a lot of times like we were improvising. We just kept saying yes and to everything. We just kept doing and starting things that we had never done before that we, again, probably weren't qualified to do. But people trusted us and we were excited about it. And it is something that when you've gone through some of that learning and we start seeing, feel that spark, you start learning, sometimes our brains also get in the way and tell us we aren't worthy to do, we don't deserve to do, there's already people doing it way better, there's already sign painters out there, why pick this up, why do this? But you kind of really have to get past that. You have to get dirty, you have to start working with it. You get messy, you make mistakes, and you can't be afraid of that. I mean, if we, again, had never started because we were afraid of design, we wouldn't be here. Like, we would not have been able to get to this point. If we tried to make every event flyer perfect, we wouldn't get things done. You just have to do. You have to go. You have to say yes and move forward.
And part of that doing also links back to that process of knowing what you've done wrong in the past. So looking back at those mistakes and being like, oh yeah, this is something that I can clearly improve on. Taking that into the next job, taking that into the next sign, taking that into the next accounting client, if that's your jam. So yeah, do. That's our next step.
Yeah.
Which I still haven't painted.
He's getting there. He's getting there. But we're going to keep moving forward. Our next idea or word that we wanted to hit on was practice, because that just means doing it again and again and again. Because once you start, you really have to keep riding that wave. You know, we had to, again, keep taking clients, keep messing up, keep going on this kind of adventure. And it gets hard, but it also, that's how you learn. It's by the constant doing. We spent many months and years of working some late nights and some weekends until we learned we should have some healthy boundaries around our small business. You know, we worked for less than we should have and promised more than we should have until we learned about kind of our value, about how we worked, about our own flow, about what really matters to us in design, and what sort of clients we want to work with. And it's not easy, and it's not an easy thing to do, and it doesn't come fast. It is just this kind of constant doing, this constant practice.
I will say sign painting is, as you've just witnessed, the perfect example of doing is slow. You're not going to start practicing something and it's just going to click and you're going to be great. No, like you may think that. Look at other people's work who have come before. Like, it's a depth of a field that just outweighs everything that you think you know. So inside of practice, it's also realizing that what you're doing always has room for improvement, which I think so far is just like a resonatory note across our development of flow.
Which leads into, I'm going to try wrapping it up.
Yeah.
Just going to keep going. Is flow, is the idea of hitting that perfect groove, that perfect feeling of confidence and mastery, and I can just zone in and get it done, which is what we strive for and what in some ways we've been able to find. You know, even though he's rushing right now, he has finally found a really great flow, and he really loves doing this, and he can get up and make a sign in a very short while that I would not know how to do. And I think that's something that we can find flow in our craft. We can find flow in areas of our life. There's obviously, I think all of us probably have things that we already are confident in, have mastery in, which, you know, pat yourselves on the back. It means that you spent a lot of time practicing and messing up to getting to a point where now you know the ins and outs of Illustrator or Photoshop or an accounting software.
Just waking up in the morning and getting to work on time.
That takes a certain self-knowledge and a certain amount of flow. You know, and there are certain things that now we feel so much more comfortable in, just moving through an ease with which we work, and there are lots of things that we are starting this process all over again on. This is never ending. We have other sparks, we have things we are trying to start now, things that we've in the muck of trying to do, both in our work life and in our personal lives, other interests that have gotten us going and that we're still trying to figure this whole thing out on. But finding that flow is magical. I think you all know that, and we really do wish and hope that for all of you in whatever way that might be. And
sure.
Yeah,
find your flow. Do what fucking gets you lit. Sorry, language.